This is 25 April 2022, Monday, approximately 18:30 hours Eastern. It is day 61 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Now, I got to put out these reminders right away, otherwise the trolls don't stick around long enough to the end to actually hear them. Reminders. I get my information from multiple sources. I get it from mainstream media. I get it from alternative media. I get it from independent reporters that are on the ground. I also get information from governmental sources and non-governmental sources. I try to get as much info as I can from as wide of an area as possible to try to figure out what the hell is happening on the ground, because we cannot trust the information that is on the mainstream media, because that is pretty much pure propaganda across the board. And we cannot necessarily trust the social media postings that come out of the Ukrainian battlefield, because that in and of itself is also heavily slanted, to put it mildly. Now, if you want to view the articles that I get my information from, there's a link to my Patreon channel down in the description. Click on that, go over there. I post the articles, the video clips, and what other information I get on there. It is not locked. You can view it without being a patron. But if you so choose, you can become a patron, kick me $1 or $5 or $10, whatever you so choose. The money that I get from my patrons, I use to purchase training aids for use on the channel. I also use it to purchase supplies, primarily food and medical. Now, reminder, I do not support Zelensky and the oligarchs in charge of Ukraine. Remember, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about there needed to be investigations into their criminal activity involving certain people in the government here in the United States and across Europe. I also do not support the Nazi wannabes in the Ukrainian military or the Ukrainian government. As far as I'm concerned, every one of them deserve to be swinging from a rope until their bodies rot, fall down, and hit the ground, and then they should be bulldozed into a fucking ditch, buried, not even a marker put on top marking where they're at. They can burn in hell. Now, I also do not support Putin and the oligarchs in charge of Russia. As far as I'm concerned, they're a bunch of criminals too. It's debatable as to which government is more corrupt, the Russian or the Ukrainian. I got a feeling it'd be a coin flip to determine which one it is. So, who do I support? I support the troops on the battlefield that are having to fight this war. It wasn't their call to do this. They don't want to be there. They don't want to be fighting. They'd rather be home or back at base training. And I especially support the people on the ground that are having to go through this, the civilians. It's not their choice. They don't want to be involved. They're caught in the middle. And they're being used as pawns by both sides. Now, once again, civilian casualty numbers coming from the United Nations, because theirs are more believable than the inflated numbers that were coming out from the Ukrainian government. Which it looks like they've stopped putting out, because I haven't noticed them do a release on that anymore beyond their whole, oh, at least 20,000 have died here, at least 50,000 have died there, oh, it's a slaughter. But the UN numbers as of this morning, civilians killed 2,665, wounded 3,053, refugees that have fled the country are around 5.2 million. This does include a lot of them that are being evacuated into Russia right now, out of the fighting in eastern Ukraine and down in the Crimea, Mariupol area. Battle damage assessment. I do not have any current numbers from the Russians on what they say they have lost. But we have the Ukrainian army stating that they've killed 21,900 Russian troops minimum. The British Ministry of Defense did a press release today stating that they believe the number of Russian soldiers killed in the war so far stands around 15,000. Equipment lost. As always, there's two numbers. You have what Ukraine claims, and then you have the number that can be confirmed through videos and pictures off of the battlefield. Tanks. Ukraine claims 884. Only 554 can be confirmed. Armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles claimed 2,258. Confirmed 1,055. Artillery systems claimed 411. Only 171 confirmed. Multiple launch rocket systems 149. Only 59 confirmed. SAM systems 69 claimed. 53 confirmed. Fixed wing aircraft. Ukraine claims they've shot down 181. Only 24 can be confirmed. Helicopters, Ukraine claims 154. Only 37 can be confirmed. Drones, Ukraine claims 201. Only 45 can be confirmed. Trucks, Ukraine claims they've destroyed 1,566 and also 76 fuel trucks. Only 861 can be confirmed. Ships, this is the same. That hasn't changed. Ukraine claims 8 sunk. Only 4 can be confirmed. Now, Ukrainian numbers. It is extremely hard to find any information on this because the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense does not put out any numbers on casualties or equipment lost. And when you try doing searches to find out what the Ukrainians have lost, you're not going to find anything. Okay, the last number that I found posted is from like February, when the war began. And I actually ran into it today. I tried finding Ukrainian losses. I go to a website, it gives you the Russian numbers, and then it says click here for Ukrainian numbers. You click on that link, you get a big thing that comes up on your screen saying heroes never die and they never lose equipment. So supposedly the Ukrainian military is in God mode right now. But what I do have is the confirmed numbers. A reminder though that Ukrainian troops and civilians are less likely to take pictures of their stuff that is lost, and reporters do not like showing any pictures or footage of destroyed Ukrainian equipment. And a lot of times equipment that they say is Russian that's been destroyed, you actually look at it, it's actually Ukrainian. You can tell by markings or camouflage pattern or the model. But tanks, confirmed, Ukraine has lost 139. APCs, IFVs, they've lost 231. Artillery systems, they've lost 52. MLRS, they've lost at least 15. SAMs, they've lost at least 43. Aircraft, they've lost at least 18. Helicopters, they've lost at least 5. And I think all of those 5 are from the first day of the war. Drones, they've lost at least 15. I'd say it's far beyond that now. Trucks, they've lost at least 329. Ships, they've lost at least 17. Now, situation on the battlefield. Fighting has, for the most part, ceased north of Kiev. There might still be a few individuals and units that are cut off up there, but the bulk of the Russian military is gone from up there. The fighting's in eastern and southern Ukraine. So we got here around Kharkov. There are now 2 tank brigades operating around Kharkov. There was one that was shifted there at the beginning of the war that had been getting pushed back and forth to hold back the Russian military. Well, another tank brigade was shifted in from near Kiev. There is also a report that reservist brigades are now moving out of western Ukraine and from the areas up around Kiev. They're being pushed into eastern Ukraine after receiving new used T-72s and BMPs given to them by NATO. Now there's a report here, which I laughed at when I came across it, from inside Kharkov. Ukrainian security services are stating that they seized a warehouse filled with ammunition and spare parts that they say was meant for use by the Russian army after it would be taken over Kharkov. Inside this warehouse, there was air-to-air missiles, brand new tank engines, and spare parts. They said there's around 7 to 10 railroad cars worth of items inside this warehouse. They did track some of the serial numbers on some of the equipment and confirmed that at least some of it was stolen from the Ukrainian army. Now, I got a feeling, and I did a posting on this on YouTube, and I posted it over at Patreon when I did the link. I got a feeling what happened in this situation. You had a smuggler, an arms dealer. One of their warehouses was in Kharkov. The local government authorities decided to increase their rates, or that smuggler didn't make the payment this month. And the local governmental authorities decided to raid the warehouse. You know, as I said before, when the war started and beforehand, the economic system of Ukraine is corruption. And it hasn't changed just because a war began. So I got a feeling this was someone's private stock, not necessarily pre-positioned stuff for the Russian military. Now, down in Crimea, there is reports down there that the Ukrainian army is primarily using artillery to contain Russian attacks as they're trying to push towards Mykolaiv. They're concentrating on artillery and MLRS to hold the Russians back as they shift troops from that area into eastern Ukraine for the upcoming offensive. There is reports that Russia is now launching cruise missiles against infrastructure in and around Odessa. The chance of them doing a landing around Odessa is non-existent now, not unless there's a major change on the battlefield. Now, Mariupol, where everyone's been focusing on for the last couple weeks here, or at least the last week for sure. The Azov Battalion, Regiment, Unit, whatever the hell you want to call them, is currently contained inside the Azovstal Steelworks. I said that before. Reportedly, they are completely surrounded by Russian forces. The Ukrainian military is still trying to get supplies in, and occasionally they can get a single helicopter in there, but a single helicopter cannot supply around 2,000 plus defenders and civilians. And because it's the Azov Battalion, I got a feeling they said, fuck the civilians, all the supplies, all the food belongs to us. Now, they were making a big stink on this in the media a few days ago about Putin telling the military not to assault into Azovstal. The media was saying that this was showing weakness because he was afraid of casualties. Yeah, right, sure. What he's doing is he's just cutting them off and trying to starve them out. Plain and simple. It's no different than what the Russians did to the Nazis. In another city you may have heard of, Stalingrad, you know, back around 1942. Well, they're trying to do the same thing. But they haven't completely stopped attacking the Azovstal facility. They're still doing small attacks, basically platoon and company level attacks to slowly push the perimeter in further and further. while they continue doing shelling and dropping bombs on the area. They're trying to get the Azovs to surrender without a major fight that will potentially kill the civilians that are being held as hostages inside the factory facility. Now, why do I say they're hostages? Well, the Russians actually did try opening up a humanitarian corridor out of the Azovstal facility through their lines so that the civilians could evacuate. The Ukrainian defenders said, no, we're not allowing them to leave. They have to stay here with us. And the Ukrainian government is now saying they don't trust the Russians to do the humanitarian corridor. They want the United Nations to put troops on the ground and open up the corridor for the civilians to get out of there. And to allow the Azovs to slip out of there wearing civilian clothes. And yeah, as if we haven't seen that in other areas. Or even reports of that from Mariupol over the past few weeks. Alright, now into the combatants here. Okay, Russia, last Thursday, the Russian Defense Research Facility, the Institute of Aerospace Defense, a secret facility located 110 miles northwest of Moscow, was destroyed in a fire. The fire started on the second floor. They're stated that it looked like it was an electrical fire. At least 7 people killed and 30 injured. Now, there is a lot of questions on, was this just a regular electrical fire or was this sabotage? Especially because a few hours after the fire at the Institute of Aerospace Defense, there was a fire at the largest chemical plant inside Russia, and it was destroyed. It's located, or was located, 250 miles east of Moscow. So the question is, was that saboteurs that attacked those facilities and destroyed them? Unknown for certain yet. Late last week, Russia tested the new Satan II ICBM, told the West it was food for thought. Yeah, food for thought, telling them, hey, don't get involved in this war. Sending equipment is one thing, but don't send in troops. Okay, reports from down in Mariupol that Russian forces are gathering up the dead and having to bury them in mass graves. The other option to them doing that is they leave the bodies to rot where they find them in the city. Now, the Ukrainian government and the West are condemning the Russians burying the civilian dead and the soldiers that have been killed. They're stating that it's a war crime for them to bury the dead, that only they can bury the war dead. Okay, whatever. Pentagon now believes that there are around 22 battalion tactical groups that are still being refitted in Belarus and in Western Russia. And that as soon as they are done for being refitted, they will be pushed into eastern Ukraine for the upcoming offensive. Russia now has placed even more people on their sanctions list. To include it into this list is now Camel Toe Harris, Mark Zuckerberg, Pentagon spokesman John Kirby, and others. In these sanctions are also included travel bans. And these sanctions will have just as much weight as the sanctions we've put on their people, meaning little to nothing. A report came out today that 2 more oil depots were hit and are ablaze in western Russia. One of them around Bryansk. The one at Bryansk apparently supplies fuel to the pipelines that go into Eastern Europe. in particular Germany and Poland, that general area. It's unknown what hit these depots, if this was saboteurs, if this was rockets, a helicopter attack, or if it was just random. But seriously, are we going to play that game? It's pretty obvious. It more than likely was a strike by the Ukrainians. All right. Backtrack on my pages here. Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainian Air Force is officially receiving MiG-29s and possibly other aircraft and spare parts from unidentified countries. So that is now showing us that the whole bickering back and forth that we were talking about a couple weeks ago between Poland and the U.S. on who would transfer the aircraft, that was all a smokescreen. It's believed that the MiGs and Sukhois that the Ukrainians are getting came from Poland, Bulgaria, and or possibly Slovakia. They've received a minimum of 20 new aircraft, 20 new used aircraft. Like I said from the very beginning, what was probably going on, they were flying them in at treetop level in the middle of the night, landing them on roads inside Ukraine. And they kind of hinted on that was going on inside some of the news reports I watched. Companies inside the Czech Republic have now agreed to repair battle-damaged equipment coming from Ukraine for the Ukrainian military. Just a reminder to the Czech companies, that means you're now involved in the war and you can lawfully be targeted. Just keep that in mind. Okay, we now got some information as to what destroyed that landing ship in Berdansk last month. It was apparently a strike by a Ukrainian SS-21 Scarab SRBM. So apparently it hit the ship or nearby, set fire to the ammunitions, and you lost a lot of stuff at the port. Now, there has been a lot of reports lately over the past couple weeks here about Ukrainian Scarab missiles. And I'm starting to wonder, is this kind of a getting it into the people's mind that the Ukrainians can use this stuff to try to influence the United States and other countries to turn over the long-range missiles that they may still have in inventory to Ukraine? I wonder about that. That thought occurred to me. Okay, I already mentioned that one. Information on down around the Odessa area right now. The defenses around Odessa now include a Marine brigade, one tank brigade of approximately 100 T-64s, and also the local territorial defense forces. They are occupying the defenses which are still being constructed around Odessa, which is why the thoughts of an invasion at Odessa have been taken off the table unless something major happens. There's also reports that because of the sinking of the Moskva by a Ukrainian Neptune missile from one of the batteries in that area, that the Russian Navy has pulled farther out into the Black Sea, and they're concentrating more on using cruise missiles now to hit the defenses in that area. Here's a good one for you. The U.S. Pentagon now admits they don't know what happens to all the equipment and munitions that gets delivered to Ukraine. A spokesperson or someone inside the Pentagon said this to the reporter. It was like dumping it into a big black hole. Now, the media right now is stating that, the United States has only sent $2.6 billion in aid to Ukraine. No, The number actually sent to Ukraine now is over $15.2 billion in military aid has been sent by the United States alone. Now, the Pentagon, or whoever had said they don't know what's happening to the equipment, when asked how they could better, how could that be? That we could send this stuff and not have an idea where it's going? Well, the Pentagon response was, well, they would know where it was all ending up if we just put troops on the ground. Fuck the Pentagon. Goddamn puzzle palace. The U.S. Pentagon says that the Ukrainian army now has more tanks in country than Russia because of the shipments from the West. And I do have some breakdowns on some stuff on that coming up. Ukrainian refugees outside of the country in Eastern Europe are finding jobs in companies making gear for the Ukrainian army, things like body armor and load-bearing equipment. And they're virtue signaling by posting that on social media, that these companies have expanded their production and are hiring Ukrainian refugees to do the work. All right. Now, there is a report from the Ukrainian government that the Russians are using press gangs to try to make up for their losses in their military by conscripting forcefully Ukrainians to fight in the Russian army. As soon as I heard that, I knew that this was a bait and switch thing, because there was more and more and more reports coming out about Ukrainian army conscription gangs going around snatching people off the streets. So to cover it up, the Ukrainians are saying, oh, it's not the Ukrainians doing it, it's the Russians doing it. They're kidnapping our people and making them fight against us. And a report today that 5 rail stations had been hit by the Russian military over the last about 48 hours. Now, as soon as I heard that, I automatically figured the Russians were targeting these rail stations probably to try to hit incoming train loads of artillery, tanks, and armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles coming in from NATO. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense did a press release today talking about the Russians were concentrating on the Ukrainian rail network to stop NATO from their shipments reaching the Ukrainian army. So the media here in the West, especially the US, is saying that Russians are hitting the rail stations to kill civilians trying to flee. But you have this in the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense press release stating that the Russians are concentrating on hitting the rail system to stop the train loads of equipment coming in from NATO. So, okay, back to page 1 again. Okay, we now have here confirmation as to the type of howitzers the United States is shipping into Ukraine. The first batch was delivered last week, Tuesday. And these are M777 155 millimeter howitzers. I do not know the exact model. Now, going along with this, last Thursday, Biden authorized an additional $800 million in military aid. This is different than the previous week's $800 million in military aid. I got a feeling they did the 2 batches of $800 million to throw people off, to make them think that it's the exact same thing. No, it's 2 separate batches worth $800 million each. Now, included in this second batch of military aid from this late last week, there is at least 72 more M777 howitzers going to the Ukrainian army, and over 140,000 artillery shells for those howitzers, along with tactical vehicles to tow those howitzers, spare parts for that equipment, and additional field gear. I know I got another follow-up to that one. Oh, here it is. Now, in this second batch of military aid, the $800 million from last Thursday, the U.S. will be supplying 120 Phoenix Ghost drones. These were developed quickly by the United States Air Force on request from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. Now, there's no specific information on this drone because this was literally just thrown together. Now, they say in the news reports, the reporters state that, well, this will be similar to the Switchblade. But when you read through the articles and watch the news stories on this, you can kind of get the idea that the Phoenix Ghost is probably a drone that's a little bit more advanced, that will be used to better direct the fires from the new artillery pieces they're getting from the United States. So you're probably going to see in there some type of GPS coordinate system put in there. Maybe some type of grid system will appear on the screen so that they can better adjust fires. And one thing I'm wondering about, because of the number of shells we're sending, does the Phoenix Ghost probably have some type of laser designator targeting system? If it does, then that potentially means that in those 140,000 shells, we might be including M712 Copperhead rounds, which are a very advanced round. I remember when those came out in the late 90s, and the artillery guys talking about that thing was a game changer. They could now take the laser targeting designator equipment that we had in the inventories, and then instead of just using it for aircraft bombs, smart bombs, we could now use it for artillery rounds, so that instead of launching 10 rounds in to take care of a single tank, we could just paint it with the laser and take it out with just a single copperhead. So I got a question if that might be what's going on with that one. And it's all just a guess, because there's no information out there on the Phoenix Ghost. There probably will be in about a month, but nothing now. Oh, 40 countries were invited to a meeting in Germany this week to discuss the Russian-Ukrainian war. Only around 20 said they will attend. The primary focus of the discussion will be the military needs of Ukraine and how much equipment those countries can give the Ukrainians. Probably why you only get about a 50% participation rate from the 40 that were invited. Now, they are still dragging German Chancellor Olaf Scholz through the mud. He is under heavy fire for refusing to send more equipment to Ukraine, such as tanks. Reportedly, Scholz and the Bundeswehr said no to approximately 2/3 of the equipment demanded by Zelensky. They said it's not going to happen. We need the stuff for us. But instead, the German government will pay for equipment purchased by Ukraine from German companies. Now, to go along with this, Switzerland is blocking Germany from transferring Swiss-made ammunition that the Bundeswehr holds to the Ukrainians. Just like Germany had that clause in the equipment they sold other countries that if it is meant for a war zone for aggressor operations, Germany would not allow it. Well, apparently Switzerland did the same thing to Germany. And they're saying that ammunition that Germany wants to send over there, well, they can't do it because the Swiss made it and not the Germans. Okay, we got new equipment flowing into Ukraine from the Baltics. Lithuania has transferred heavy mortars and ammo worth around 10 million euros. It's believed that they're probably the 2B11 120 millimeter mortar system, which is Soviet era. It's thought to be that because of the price tag and that stuff, that they probably sent around 20 of those mortars to the Ukrainian military. But no one can say for certain because Lithuania is saying that the specifics on the aid package is classified. There's also talk that the mortars being sent are older mortars from Sweden that were in the Lithuanian inventory also, but also 120 millimeter. No one knows for certain. Now, Poland is officially sending 100 T-72s. Some of them old Soviet production. Some of them are the versions that Poland produces to Ukraine. And in order for this transfer to go through, they signed a deal with the United States that the U.S. is going to send around 250 M1A2 SEP version 3s. So right now they're sending 3 battalions worth of T-72s to the Ukrainian army, 100 tanks. They're going to be getting 250 from the United States inventory. That's what it looks like. I can't say for certain if these are coming from General Dynamics or whoever makes the Abrams, or if these are coming from the U.S. military specifically. All it says is that they're coming from the United States. And usually when they say that, it means it's coming from the U.S. military. Now, the U.S. former ambassador to Ukraine under Trump, Marie Yovanovitch, was interviewed by PBS. And this former ambassador let some things slip. And this appeared in the alternative media but did not appear in the mainstream media. She admitted that the invasion would not have happened if Trump was still in office, if he had his second term. That Trump would have stopped the invasion from happening by diplomatic means. When questioned further on it, she broke down and she said that that would be bad if Trump had stopped the invasion. The invasion happening is good. Track it down yourself to get the specifics on what she actually said, but that's summing it up from what I've read. Austria is now opposing Ukraine even being made a candidate to join the European Union. The Chancellor of Austria has serious questions concerning the Bucha massacre and is citing that as the reason why Austria is opposing Ukraine joining the EU. The Austrian Chancellor has these questions after talking with the Russian government about the situation. And also all the reports coming from independent reporters on the ground who are pointing out certain things like the Ukrainians having control of the area for a couple days before the massacre was reported. And in case you missed it, Comrades Blinken and Austin from the United States are in Kiev and they are meeting with President Adolf. They are pledging their loyalty to President Adolf and saying he can have whatever he wants and they just need to know what he wants. And reportedly, President Adolf has given Comrades Blinken and Austin a list of equipment he demands immediately from the U.S. military. And reportedly, Austin said, okie dokie. So we're going to see a hell of a lot more equipment coming from the U.S. military going to Ukraine. What it is, well, we're going to find out in the upcoming episodes, won't we? That's all the info I got for this sit rep. I don't think I missed anything. I had like 5 or 6 pages I was going through this time. It was quite a bit. We'll see if maybe I can get out another sit rep later this week. Who knows? Maybe I can knock one out on Friday. No guarantees. Now, for all my engineer brothers and the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.